Have you ever wondered what really happens when you stop being constantly available to everyone around you? What shifts when you finally pull back your emotional energy and reclaim your space? Why do some people panic when you go silent? And more importantly, why does it feel so powerful when you do? If you're ready to dive into the deeper meaning of emotional withdrawal and personal transformation, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights on self-mastery and personal growth. Let's get into it. There's a silent revolution that begins the moment you stop making yourself emotionally available to everyone. According to the legendary psychologist Carl Jung, the path to becoming a whole, authentic individual starts when you choose solitude over constant connection, when you stop reacting and start reflecting. 1. Transformation begins with withdrawal. The journey toward profound personal transformation often begins not with grand gesture or a sudden leap, but with a quiet, deliberate act of withdrawal. It's the moment you decide to step back, emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically, from the relentless demands and expectations of the world around you. This withdrawal isn't necessarily about isolation or shutting people out permanently. Rather, it's about creating a necessary pause, a sacred space where the constant external noise fades, allowing the whispers of your inner self to finally be heard. Think of it as drawing a breath after being submerged underwater for too long. In that gasp of air, clarity begins to return. Carl Jung, a pioneer in depth psychology, profoundly understood this dynamic. He emphasized that true psychological growth, the process he termed individuation, often necessitates periods of turning inward, away from collective clamor, to engage with the deeper strata of one's own psyche. It is in this intentional solitude, the stepping back from the reactive fray, that we move from simply reacting to life based on external stimuli to consciously reflecting upon our experiences, choices, and innermost truths. When you initiate this withdrawal, the effects ripple outwards, often unsettling the ecosystems you inhabit. People who have grown accustomed to your constant emotional presence, your readily available ear, your predictable reactions, may begin to feel uneasy, even anxious. Their equilibrium, perhaps unknowingly built upon your accessibility, is disrupted. Why does this happen? It's rarely born of malice. Often, it's because they have relied on your energy, your validation, or your role as a sounding board to regulate their own emotional states, or to avoid confronting their own internal landscapes. Your consistent availability acted as a sort of emotional ballast for them. When that ballast is suddenly lighter or removed, they are forced to find their own center of gravity. Your silence, your unavailability, inadvertently holds up a mirror, compelling them to look at their own needs, dependencies, and perhaps the emptiness they were trying to fill through constant connection with you. This can manifest as confusion, frustration, or even accusations. You've changed. You're being selfish. What's wrong? These reactions, while potentially uncomfortable to face, are signals of the shift occurring, a disruption of established, sometimes unconscious, dynamics. However, the most significant transformation happens within you. The space created by withdrawal is not an empty void. It is fertile ground for self-discovery. When you are no longer perpetually expending energy responding to texts, managing others' emotions, attending every gathering out of obligation, or anticipating the needs of everyone around you, that energy becomes available for introspection. You begin to notice patterns in your own behavior that were previously obscured by the busyness of constant engagement. Questions start to surface. Why did I always feel the need to say yes? What am I afraid will happen if I'm not always reachable? Whose expectations have I been living by? This withdrawal allows you to disentangle your sense of self from the roles you play for others, the reliable friend, the ever-present partner, the accommodating colleague. In the quiet, you start to discern the difference between the persona you present to the world and the authentic self residing beneath. This initial phase might feel unfamiliar, perhaps even disorienting. Society often conditions us to equate availability with kindness and withdrawal with coldness. Yet, this conscious stepping back is a vital act of self-reclamation. It's the necessary first step in recalibrating your internal compass, moving away from external validation towards internal authority. It is a threshold across which true, self-directed transformation begins, laying the groundwork for healthier boundaries, deeper self-awareness, and ultimately, a more authentic way of being in the world. This isn't about abandoning connection altogether, but about fundamentally changing the terms of connection, ensuring it originates from a place of conscious choice and mutual respect, rather than unconscious obligation or depletion. The quiet revolution starts here, in the space you bravely reclaim for yourself. 2. Guarding your energy with boundaries. Your emotional energy is perhaps your most precious, yet often most squandered, personal resource. It is a vital life force, the psychic fuel, what Carl Jung referred to in a broader sense as libido or psychic energy, that animates your thoughts, feelings, creativity, and interactions. Like a finite currency, it can be invested wisely, yielding returns in well-being and fulfillment, or it can be frittered away unconsciously, leaving you depleted, overwhelmed, and spiritually bankrupt. In our hyper-connected modern world, the drains on this energy are ubiquitous and relentless. The constant pinging of notifications demanding immediate attention, the endless scroll through curated lives invoking comparison and inadequacy, the colleagues who offload their stress onto you, the friends who treat you as an emotional dumping ground, the family members who wield guilt like a weapon to ensure compliance, and the subtle, unspoken expectations that hang heavy in the air, dictating how you should feel and behave. Most people navigate this landscape with porous defenses, giving away their vital energy freely, often without even realizing the extent of the leakage, until they find themselves chronically fatigued, irritable, or numb. Taking a step back, choosing strategic unavailability, is fundamentally an act of guarding the sacred energy. It is a conscious decision to erect boundaries, not impenetrable walls designed to isolate, but rather, like well-maintained fences with gates, defining your personal space while allowing for chosen healthy exchange. These boundaries are not acts of cruelty or rejection, despite how they might sometimes be perceived by those accustomed to unfettered access. Instead, they are expressions of clarity, self-respect, and energetic responsibility. When you begin to say no to draining requests, limit your availability for non-essential interactions, mute notifications during focused work or rest, or create physical distance from overwhelming environments, you are making a powerful statement. My energy is valuable, and I choose consciously where and how to invest it. This deliberate act of conservation allows you to see with startling clarity who in your life respects your time, your space, and your well-being, and who merely consumes your energy without reciprocity or regard. Those who react with anger or manipulation when faced with boundary are often revealing their dependence on your previously unlimited supply. Conversely, those who respect your need for space demonstrate maturity and understanding that forms the bedrock of healthy relationships. Carl Jung's concept of psychic energy underscores its dynamic nature. He believed it flows constantly, being exchanged in every interaction, thought, and feeling. When you give away thoughtlessly, through people-pleasing, seeking external validation, absorbing others' negativity, or engaging in pointless drama, you diminish the pool available for your own growth, creativity, and inner work. You become energetically indebted to the demands of the external world, leaving little reserve for cultivating your inner landscape. Choosing intentional unavailability is therefore synonymous with choosing to protect and consciously direct this life force. It means recognizing that you are not an infinite resource, and that preserving your energy is not selfish, but essential for maintaining psychological health and pursuing a meaningful life. This protection allows you to redirect that conserved energy towards activities and relationships that genuinely nourish and replenish you, rather than deplete you. It might mean investing more time in creative pursuits, deepening connections with supportive loved ones, engaging in self-care practices, or simply enjoying moments of restorative solitude. Setting boundaries around your emotional availability is the practical application of valuing your own energy. It is a mechanism through which you transition from being passively drained to actively curating an energetically sustainable and fulfilling life. This process requires ongoing vigilance and courage, especially in the face of societal pressures that often equate constant availability with virtue, but the reward, a reclaimed sense of vitality, focus, and inner peace, is immeasurable. 3. The journey to individuation. In the rich tapestry of Jungian psychology, the concept of individuation stands as a cornerstone, representing a lifelong psychological process of becoming an individual, a whole, integrated, and unique self, distinct from collective identities, societal expectations, and prescribed roles we often unconsciously adopt. It is a journey towards self-realization, towards fulfilling the innate potential encoded within our psyche. Crucially, Jung believed this profound journey does not typically unfold amidst the cacophony of constant social engagement or the relentless demands of the external world. Instead, it often begins and is significantly propelled by periods of silence, introspection, and withdrawal. Stepping back from the ceaseless stream of external stimuli and emotional exchanges creates the necessary internal quietude for the deeper work of self-discovery to commence. It is in this chosen solitude, this turning away from the outer world to heed the inner one, that the voice of the authentic self can begin to emerge from beneath the layers of conditioning and conformity. This withdrawal acts as a catalyst for individuation in several key ways. Firstly, it loosens the grip of the persona. The persona, in Jungian terms, is the social mask we wear, the curated version of ourselves we present to the world to navigate social interactions and gain acceptance. While a necessary aspect of functioning in society, an over-identification with persona can lead to alienation from our true selves. Constant availability often requires maintaining this mask rigidly, always performing the expected role: the helpful colleague, the agreeable friend, the supportive partner. When we withdraw, when we are no longer performing for an external audience, the mask can relax, and we get glimpses of the face beneath. We begin to question the roles we play and discern which aspects truly resonate with our core being, and which are merely habitual performances. This creates space to ask the pivotal question: who am I, really, outside of what others expect or need me to be? Secondly, withdrawal facilitates an encounter with the shadow. The shadow represents the part of ourselves that we deny, repress, or deem unacceptable, our insecurities, fears, perceived flaws, and untamed impulses. These aspects don't disappear simply because we ignore them. They operate unconsciously, often projecting themselves onto others or sabotaging our conscious intentions. The busyness of constant availability frequently serves as a distraction, a way to avoid confronting these uncomfortable truths about ourselves. In the quiet space created by stepping back, however, there is less external noise to drown out the internal whispers of the shadow. We might become aware of our own patterns of resentment, envy, or passive aggression that were previously masked by people-pleasing. This encounter, while potentially challenging, is essential for wholeness. Integrating the shadow, acknowledging and understanding these repressed aspects rather than being ruled by them, is a critical step in the individuation process. It leads to greater self-acceptance, authenticity, and psychological maturity. Furthermore, withdrawal allows us to tune into the deeper layers of the psyche, the realm of intuition, dreams, symbols, and archetypes residing within the personal and collective unconscious. Jung believed these inner resources hold profound wisdom and guidance for our individuation journey. However, their subtle messages are easily drowned out by the demands of the external world and the logic of the conscious ego. By deliberately cultivating silence and unavailability, we create the conditions necessary to listen more attentively to these inner signals. We might pay more attention to recurring dreams, notice intuitive nudges, or feel drawn to certain symbols or activities that resonate on a deeper level. This dialogue with the unconscious is fundamental to discovering our unique path and purpose. The journey of individuation is not about achieving a static state of perfection, but about engaging in a continuous process of becoming more fully and consciously ourselves. Strategic withdrawal, choosing periods of unavailability to the outer world to become available to the inner one, is not an escape, but a vital tool facilitating this essential human quest for wholeness and authenticity. It is a sacred pause where self-awareness is born and the unique, individuated self begins to blossom. For breaking free from emotional manipulation, one of the often overlooked consequences of maintaining constant emotional availability is that it inadvertently creates fertile ground for emotional manipulation. It's crucial to understand that this manipulation isn't always born from malicious intent or conscious scheming. More often, it stems from unhealthy relational dynamics, unmet needs, insecurity, and learned patterns of behavior where individuals rely on predictable reactions of others to stabilize their own emotional states or to get their needs met indirectly. When you are perpetually on call, always ready to answer phone, soothe anxieties, absorb complaints, offer solutions, or provide validation. You establish a predictable pattern. This predictability, while perhaps intended as kindness or reliability, becomes the very mechanism upon which manipulative dynamics, whether conscious or unconscious, thrive. People learn that certain behaviors, expressing distress, invoking guilt, playing the victim, applying subtle pressure, will reliably elicit a desired response from you because you are always available to provide it. Consider common scenarios. The friend who consistently calls in a state of manufactured crisis, knowing you'll drop everything to listen and offer support, effectively using your availability to avoid developing their own coping skills. Or the family member who subtly employs guilt. I guess you're too busy for me now. When your availability shifts, manipulating your sense of obligation to maintain the status quo that benefits them. Think of the partner who uses prolonged silences or passive-aggressive remarks, counting on your availability and desire for harmony to make you eventually concede or cater to their unspoken demands. In the workplace, it might manifest as colleagues consistently offloading tasks or emotional burdens, rely on your inability to say no due to your constant accessibility. In all these instances, your unwavering availability, your predictable response pattern, becomes the linchpin holding the manipulative dynamic in place. You become an unwitting participant in a cycle that may enable the other person's emotional immaturity or unhealthy coping strategies, while simultaneously draining your own resources. Choosing to strategically withdraw, to become less available, is a powerful act that directly disrupts these ingrained patterns. When you stop answering every call immediately, when you respond to demanding texts on your own timeline, when you decline requests that feel draining or manipulative, when you refuse to be drawn into guilt trips, you remove the expected reaction. You break the predictable cycle. This sudden unavailability throws the dynamic off balance. The person accustomed to relying on your reaction is forced to confront the disruption. Their usual strategy no longer works, which can lead to a range of responses: confusion, anger, frustration, attempts to escalate the manipulative behavior, or, ideally, a moment of self-reflection. By refusing to play your assigned role in the dynamic, you're no longer serving as a mirror for their projections, a cushion for their insecurities, or an enabler of their avoidance tactics. Your unavailability creates a vacuum where the old pattern used to be, forcing the other person to find a different way to manage their emotions or communicate their needs, potentially a healthier, more direct way. This process is rarely comfortable. You may face backlash, accusations of selfishness, or intensified attempts to pull you back into a familiar dynamic. You might grapple with your own ingrained guilt or fear of conflict. However, standing firm in your decision to be less available is an act of profound self-respect. It communicates that your energy and time are valuable and that you are unwilling to participate in dynamics that feel manipulative or draining. More than just protecting yourself, this withdrawal can sometimes be a catalyst for growth in the other person. By refusing to enable the unhealthy pattern, you offer them an often unwelcome opportunity to develop greater self-reliance, emotional regulation, and more direct communication skills. Whether they take that opportunity or choose to seek out another readily available source is up to them. Your responsibility lies in recognizing and dismantling your role in these manipulative exchanges. Breaking free requires courage and consistency, but by becoming strategically unavailable, you reclaim your agency, protect your energy, and pave the way for relationships built on mutual respect and authentic connection, rather than obligation and subtle control. You give them the chance to either grow or go. 5. The power of strategic silence. In a world saturated with noise, constant chatter, and the pressure for immediate response, silence is often misinterpreted. It can be mistaken for weakness, passivity, disengagement, or even hostility. Yet, when wielded consciously and strategically, particularly in the context of managing emotional availability, silence transforms into a potent tool, a form of profound strength, boundary assertion, and communication in its own right. Strategic silence is not the empty void of disconnection, nor is it the aggressive stonewalling that shuts down communication. Rather, it is a deliberate pause, a conscious withholding of immediate reaction, a space created intentionally to serve a specific purpose, reclaiming control, de-escalating tension, fostering clarity, or simply preserving one's inner peace. It is an active choice, not a default state of inaction. One of the primary powers of strategic silence lies in its ability to set and reinforce boundaries without a single word being uttered. When faced with demanding requests, intrusive questions, guilt trips, or attempts to draw you into drama, choosing silence, delaying a response, offering a non-committal pause, or simply not engaging sends a clear, albeit unspoken, message. It communicates, "This is not acceptable. I will not be rushed. I refuse to participate in this dynamic," or "My time and energy are not yours to command at will." This silent boundary can often be more effective than lengthy explanations or justifications, which can inadvertently invite further debate or manipulation. Silence, in its ambiguity, forces the other person to confront the limits you are imposing without giving them specific arguments to latch onto or refute. It draws a line in the sand, quietly but firmly. Furthermore, strategic silence is an incredibly effective tool for de-escalation. In heated conversations, arguments, or situations charged with negative emotion, the instinct is often to react immediately, to defend, counterattack, or over-explain. This usually fuels the fire, escalating the conflict. Choosing silence, however, taking a breath, pausing before responding, or even stating calmly, "I need some time to think about this," disrupts the reactive cycle. It introduces a space for emotions to cool, for perspectives to potentially shift, and for a more measured and thoughtful response to emerge later, if at all. Silence refuses to add fuel to the emotional bonfire, allowing it to burn down naturally rather than explode. It demonstrates emotional regulation and prevents you from being drawn into reactive patterns that you might later regret. Silence also has the power to compel clarity. When you don't immediately jump in to fill conversational gaps, answer questions instantly, or provide the expected reassurance, it creates a vacuum that the other person often feels compelled to fill. This can lead them to reveal more about their true intentions, needs, or underlying motivations. Without your immediate reaction shaping their next move, they might elaborate, clarify their position, or even backtrack, providing you with valuable information you might not have gained otherwise. Your silence becomes an invitation for them to be more explicit and take more responsibility for their communication, rather than relying on you to interpret or manage their unspoken expectations. Perhaps most importantly, strategic silence is an act of reclaiming personal power. In a culture that demands constant availability and immediate responsiveness, the ability to choose silence, to resist the urge to instantly react, explain, defend, or justify, is a profound assertion of autonomy. It signifies that you are in control of your responses, your time, and your energy. You are no longer operating solely based on external stimuli or others' demands. This internal locus of control is deeply empowering. It shifts the dynamic from one where you feel obligated and reactive to one where you feel centered and deliberate. The statement, "I'm no longer here to serve your comfort at the cost of my peace," is powerfully conveyed through the conscious and strategic application of silence. It's a quiet declaration of self-sovereignty, a testament to the strength found not in noise, but in stillness. Learning to wield silence strategically is mastering an art form, the art of using absence to create presence, using pause to assert power, and using quiet to communicate volumes. 6. Facing the cost of disconnection. Embarking on the path of becoming less emotionally available, of guarding your energy and setting firm boundaries, is a journey of reclaiming power and fostering authenticity. However, it would be dishonest to portray this transformation as entirely seamless or without its challenges. There is inevitably a cost associated with this shift, the cost of disconnection. Let's be honest. Deliberately pulling back your energy, saying no more often, and becoming less accessible can feel profoundly uncomfortable, even lonely, especially initially. Furthermore, it almost guarantees some form of pushback from the world around you, forcing you to confront the friction that arises when you deviate from established relational patterns. Understanding and preparing for this cost is crucial for navigating the transition successfully and sustaining your commitment to energetic self-preservation. The most immediate and common form of pushback comes from those who are accustomed to, and perhaps dependent on, your previous level of availability. Their reactions can range from confusion and hurt, "What did I do wrong?" to outright anger and accusation. "You become so selfish. You don't care about me anymore." Guilt trips may become more frequent, designed to pull you back into the old, familiar dynamic where their needs are consistently prioritized. You might find yourself excluded from certain social circles or interactions, either because your new boundaries make you seem difficult or because the relationships were primarily based on your utility rather than genuine connection. Gossip and misunderstanding can arise as people try to make sense of the change in you, often projecting their own insecurities or judgments onto your actions. This external resistance can be deeply unsettling, tapping into primal fears of rejection and abandonment. Internally, the cost can be just as significant. Years, perhaps decades, of conditioning yourself to be constantly available, to prioritize others' needs, and to equate self-worth with helpfulness are not easily undone. Setting boundaries can trigger intense feelings of guilt, anxiety, and self-doubt. You might worry excessively about hurting others' feelings or damaging relationships. The initial phase of withdrawal can indeed feel lonely, especially if your social life was previously built around being constantly on. There can be a sense of loss, grieving the end of certain relationships that don't survive the shift, or mourning the parts of your old identity, the always reliable one that you are letting go of. The people pleaser within you might scream in protest, urging you to revert to the old ways to restore harmony and avoid conflict. Facing this internal and external resistance requires significant courage and self-compassion. However, it is essential to reframe this cost. Is it truly a cost, or is it more accurately described as an investment in your long-term well-being, authenticity, and the quality of your connections? The discomfort and friction are often necessary byproducts of growth and evolution. Like a snake shedding its skin, the process can be vulnerable and awkward, but it is essential for allowing a newer, more authentic self to emerge. The relationships that falter or end when you establish healthier boundaries were likely built on an unsustainable foundation of obligation, enmeshment, or one-sided giving. Their dissolution, while potentially painful, ultimately creates space for connections based on mutual respect, genuine care, and an appreciation for who you are, not just what you provide. The pushback you encounter acts as a powerful filtering mechanism, revealing the true nature and health of your relationships. Those who truly see you, respect your needs, and value your growth may initially be surprised or need time to adjust, but ultimately, they will adapt and stay. The ones who don't, they were likely only there for the convenience of your constant availability, for what you gave, not for who you are. Facing the cost of disconnection, therefore, is an integral part of the individuation process. The necessary friction involved in differentiating yourself from unhealthy patterns and collective expectations. It requires acknowledging potential pain and loneliness, validating your own feelings of guilt or fear, without letting them dictate your actions, and continually reaffirming your reasons for choosing this path. It means understanding that true connection thrives on authenticity and mutual respect, not on self-abandonment. The price of evolution is often misunderstanding and the shedding of what no longer serves you. While challenging, weathering this phase leads to a profound sense of integrity, stronger and more authentic relationships, and the quiet confidence that comes from honoring your own needs and energy. The cost, viewed in this light, is a necessary passage fee for claiming a life lived on your own terms. 7. Reclaiming your power. The act of consciously choosing to become less emotionally available is, at its core, an act of reclaiming personal power. This isn't power in the conventional sense of dominance or control over others, but rather power defined as agency, self-determination, the sovereign right to govern your own internal resources, your time, your energy, your focus, and your emotional landscape. For too long, many of us operate under the illusion that power lies in pleasing others, in being indispensable, in saying yes to every request. We cede our power unconsciously, allowing external demands, societal expectations, and emotional need of others to dictate the rhythm of our lives. Becoming strategically unavailable flips this script entirely. It is a declaration that you are reclaiming the authority to choose where your life force flows, moving from a state of passive reactivity to one of conscious, empowered action. This reclaimed power manifests most clearly in the ability to make choices based on internal alignment rather than external pressure. The constant pressure to be available often erodes our capacity for genuine choice. Yes becomes an automatic reflex driven by obligation, guilt, or feared disapproval, while no feels fraught with potential negative consequences. When you intentionally create space by being less available, you gift yourself the pause needed to consult your inner compass. You can ask yourself, does this request align with my values? Do I have the energetic resources for this right now? Is this relationship reciprocal and nourishing? Does this commitment move me closer to my purpose, or drain me unnecessarily? The ability to answer these questions honestly and act accordingly is personal power. It's the power to say no clearly, kindly, and without debilitating guilt, understanding that a no to an external demand is often a profound yes to your own well-being, priorities, or peace. Mastering the guilt-free no is a significant milestone in reclaiming your energetic sovereignty. Furthermore, reclaiming power through strategic unavailability involves consciously reinvesting the energy you conserve. When you are no longer constantly pouring your resources into managing others' expectations, engaging in draining interactions, or participating in obligatory activities, a surplus of energy becomes available. This is where true transformation accelerates. This reclaimed energy is a currency for building a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. You gain the power to invest your time and focus in relationships that genuinely nourish and uplift you, fostering deeper connections based on mutual respect and reciprocity, rather than depletion. You free up bandwidth for pursuing passions, creative projects, or professional goals that align with your deeper purpose. You create space for essential self-care practices, rest, reflection, movement, time in nature, that replenish your spirit and enhance your resilience. You become available not to chaos, drama, and manipulation, but available to yourself, to your own needs, dreams, and growth. This deliberate redirection of energy is where the magic happens. You move from merely surviving the demands of the external world to actively thriving and creating a life that reflects your innermost values. This shift fundamentally alters your relationship with the world. Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstance, constantly buffeted by external demands, you begin to operate from a place of centeredness and intention. You recognize that your emotional and energetic state is your responsibility, and you take proactive steps to protect and cultivate it. This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. Rather, it means ensuring that your giving comes from a place of fullness and conscious choice, not depletion and obligation. True connection, you realize, doesn't require sacrificing your own well-being. In fact, by preserving your energy and cultivating inner peace, you become capable of showing up more fully, authentically, and compassionately in the relationships and endeavors that truly matter. Empowerment in this context is the freedom that comes from choosing presence over performance, purpose over people-pleasing, and inner alignment over external validation. By becoming strategically unavailable to the noise, you reclaim the power to orchestrate a life resonant with your own unique rhythm and truth. 8. A new you is born. The culmination of this journey, the conscious withdrawal, the diligent guarding of energy, the setting of boundaries, the strategic use of silence, the facing of disconnection, and the reclamation of personal power, leads inevitably to a profound internal shift, the birth of a new you. This isn't merely about adopting new habits. It's a fundamental transformation of self, rooted in the deep psychological work that Carl Jung described as essential for achieving wholeness. Jung famously asserted that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In order to become whole, integrated individuals, we must confront the parts of ourselves we have long ignored, denied, or repressed, the shadow aspects dwelling in the unconscious. The space, silence, and reduced external pressure created by strategic unavailability provide the very crucible needed for this often challenging, yet ultimately liberating confrontation. When the constant noise of external demands and expectations subsides, what rises to the surface is often the uncomfortable truth of our own inner landscape. Without the usual distractions of being perpetually busy or focused on others, we are left face to face with ourselves, our unmet needs, our hidden resentments, our fears, our insecurities, the patterns of behavior rooted in past wounds. We might recognize the extent to which we sought external validation because we lacked inner self-worth, or how our fear of conflict led us to enable unhealthy dynamics. This encounter with the shadow, facilitated by the quiet solitude of unavailability, is a starting point for integration. By acknowledging these aspects, Bringing them into the light of conscious awareness rather than allowing them to operate unseen, we begin to reclaim the energy tied up in repression and denial. We start the process of integrating these disparate parts into a more complete and honest version of ourselves. This integration is the essence of psychological rebirth. This rebirth is rarely a single dramatic event, but rather a gradual unfolding, a shedding of old skins. The you that was defined primarily by external roles, by the need for approval, by the habit of self-abandonment in the name of connection, begins to recede. In its place, a more authentic self starts to emerge, one grounded in internal values, guided by an inner compass, and characterized by a quiet confidence that doesn't require constant external validation. This new self understands the value of its own energy and deploys it consciously. It engages in relationships with greater discernment, seeking quality over quantity, reciprocity over obligation. It communicates more directly, sets boundaries more clearly, and navigates conflict with greater emotional maturity. This emerging self is not necessarily louder or more forceful. Often, it is quieter, more centered, and possesses a deeper sense of integrity and presence. It is the self that was always there, beneath the layers of conditioning and expectation, waiting for the space and silence to be heard. This transformation explains the feeling of power mentioned at the outset. It's the power that comes from alignment, the congruence between your inner state and your outer actions. When you stop being the person everyone expects you to be, constantly available and accommodating, and start embodying the person you were meant to be, guided by your own truth, everything changes. Your interactions become more authentic, your choices more intentional, your life imbued with a greater sense of purpose and meaning. This doesn't mean life becomes free of challenges, but you navigate them with a newfound resilience and clarity, anchored in a stronger sense of self. The journey initiated by choosing unavailability culminates in a profound internal shift. It's a testament to the fact that true transformation often requires stepping back from the world to find oneself, and that rebirth doesn't happen amidst clamor and the noise, but in the generative power of intentional silence and sacred solitude. So, reflect. Who have you been operating under the demands of constant availability? And who are you becoming, now that you are creating space to hear your own voice? The new you is not someone entirely different, but rather the most authentic, integrated version of who you have always been, finally given the space to breathe and be. If this message resonated with you, give a thumbs up, share it with someone who's always giving too much, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Remember, protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. And when you stop being available to the noise, you finally start hearing your own voice.